Hello. Hope hope I am audible and all of you people are hearing, can hear and see me. And, I hope it's working properly. Baga- Okay, great. So cool. So I will begin. First of all, I will like to introduce myself. Uh, my name is Jithinlal N R. I am from Kerala and I am based in Kochi. Uh, and uh, and today I am going to uh, show some of my works, and share with you like the things I was actually thinking, and kind of process through which I actually was going through, and what all kind of influences or things have made it possible. And I would like to thank uh, Prabhakar and the secular arts movement and Gautami Putra sir for giving me this opportunity. So I think I will go to the slides and start. Okay, so today I'm the topic today I'm trying to talk about is titled. It's a kind of a tentative title. I'm on the outset. I will like to say that this was uh, in the same kind of a idea I presented in Government College of Thrissur, and this and in this presentation I'm actually trying to brush up that same idea again and to present it to you in a more better way. So today's topic is towards emancipation, possibility of fiction and imagination. uh, so I would like to uh, start with a dedication. I would like to dedicate this presentation to my uncle who passed away recently uh, last year. His name is K. Devdas, and what you see right now on the screen is one of his painting, uh, uh, which is called "Mad and Beautiful," and this is actually one of my favorite painting of his that he has done, and this is actually dedicated to him. And he has actually told me a uh, lot of stories about people and the place where I was actually born, and where like uh, and he was a storyteller for me. So I start with one of his quote, uh, dedicated to K. Devdas, the storyteller. And this is the phrase from his one of his notes uh, that I could find on his diary. And tells, I dreamt so many deadly dreams. Then also I think I was sink in the deep water, mad and beautiful. And so this is the painting that actually goes with it. So if you see at this painting, you can see a river and a lot of like human bodies, like and a big fish. So there was this folk narrative of a fish that once my father's brother told me about, like in the fields where we used to stay uh, in the night when the fisher folk men used to go for hunting, they used to find these huge fishes uh, that cannot be caught. So we made actually an offering to all this animistic spirits of this fish, and all the fisherman had to give his first catch, uh, dedicated to the spirit, uh, and these are actually considered to be the ancestors uh, of the people who are the descendants. So, on this note, I would start the presentation. So, this work uh, uh, was a watercolor, which was part of my show in Coach. I got this award for Artist Grant in 2019, and I did a show with Coach in Delhi, a solo show. And this watercolor was one of the works from that show, which also became the poster. And this image was based on the idea of the paint human body, which I actually worked out earlier from the image that I made as posters for this during the time of the Una incident that happened. And this is a very simple watercolor, and this was the title of the show, which was called "Another Life is Possible." And again, this title derives from one of the book by K.K. Baburaj, uh, which uh, which has the same title in Malayalam, which is called Mattoru Jeevanam Sadhyamanu. And I was actually inspired by one of the essay that he wrote in one of his in that same book, which became my departure point to actually conceive the show with a similar title. So the show actually contains a lot of, I would rather say, a lot of experimental works like small scale drawings, and which is done in sketch pens, and and also found objects which I found I could find around the place, and which I was also trying to articulate in to the discourse that I was trying to talk about. Uh, so and a lot of these images actually are reused from my earlier show that I actually did in 2018 in Baroda, which was called A Dark Place in the Sun. And that title also comes from a part of a poem by S. Joseph. Uh, he is a Malayali poet, and that phrase, "a dark place in the sun," comes from that. And some of these drawings you can also see as part of the earlier show that I did. So that project has been going through. I've been working in small small drawings, and it has been growing. So the whole idea was to you know uh, arrange it together to try to say try to make convey what I was trying to speak. Uh, so this is another image from the same show, and the show actually was inspired by a book by Sanal Mohan, which is called "Modernity of Slavery." In the talk of Sajan Mani, I think he has provided the link to that book. And the same book has also inspired me because I think it's a really pioneer book which talks about the vernacular history of Kerala, which has never been a part of any kind of discourse. And that book actually talks about the work of Koigila Pachan and the PRDS and his contributions and the way he actually articulated the language of resistance, which I thought was uh, really interesting and to work with. So, and it the show doesn't cater directly towards uh, the book, but I have used some of the elements from that, some inspiration from the book uh, to uh, to understand my idea. Actually, when I talk about my work, I would like to also say that books and stories and a lot of things have really influenced my idea towards art and towards the idea of aesthetics. So, as I towards the start of the presentation, as I showed my uncle's work, and that actually talked about a lot of stories, the stories of the ancestors, the stories of the land, the stories about the animals there, and these are all part of a narrative that uh, now we couldn't tap into. So that was also a concern that I was trying to share, and what was the idea of a narrative imagination that I could actually bring in as an aspect of this show. So this is another view from the same show. Same show, uh, which is okay, uh, and this is so as I told you earlier, like most of my practice have been I was able to articulate most of my practice through the reading also that I was going through. So this is I have also included in the presentation some fragments from the text that I was reading, and also the images of my work. And also there is also something that I've done, the thing with as how I understand this thing is like it is, or the time has never traveled for me in a linear progression kind of way. The aspect of time has been very complicated because I have started and actually gone through again and again through the same place with a whole different kind of articulation. And I hope, and in this presentation, I've also tried that I actually go back and forth towards how I was doing my work, doing my work. So this is a phrase which tells, "I behold the history of many races. Every history in Kerala was searched for. There was none on the earth to write the story of my race, and it was drowned in the abysmal darkness of neither world." So, what Koigel Appachan here was trying to say that about about an about the absence of a language that was uh, or absence of of an episteme that was there to articulate uh, an experience that was a part of the subaltern people in the Kerala, and that thing, if you talk about that, I think that has driven me a lot towards my concern, like towards my concern, like how the aspect of the erasure, or the aspect of a void that as a person who comes from a subaltern community into the mainstream world, you don't, first thing you will have to experience is that you don't find any kind of similar representations anywhere around you, and that always creates a double inside you. Like you always have to have that extra fight to uh, to be you know to be what you actually uh, are. It's a kind of a constant struggle with this two powers, which Du Bois actually calls as a double consciousness, which is a constant fight of a person who who is a problem, you know, like who is actually a problem for the society. So who actually lives in that kind of problem. So so from this thing, I will go back to my earlier show, which was called Dark Place in the Sun, where I was actually starting up my discourse uh, towards the identity, towards identity, where I was actually the first problem I was trying to face was to identify. I think that becomes a very crucial moment in every person's life, that uh, that you have to actually identify, to actually make uh, 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 to actually verbalize what you are trying to assimilate. So otherwise you always end up being alienated from yourself, your proposed self, and what you actually are, and your experiences and your body, and all these things are alienated in that sense. So the whole idea of this show was about you know uh, as the title also symbolizes. When I was reading this poem, the title actually got me an image of a place which was actually dense, and which actually had a memory of my childhood places that I used to live as a kid. And all the drawings of this uh, like this show, uh, if you see, are about that place. Basically, they are all landscapes of of fields which was the of paddy fields, which because of not cultivation, they have gone arid lands. And because of a lot of other political reasons, which these lands cannot be used for anything else. And because of a lot of political history, these became a living embodiment of kind of some kind of a ruin. So I was trying to make that landscape as it is, and that was uh, uh, some of the works of this part of the show. So here I would like to talk about an idea of so here I would like to talk about the idea of Vismriti, which I borrowed from the text of D.R. Nagaraj, uh, the which talks about this, the memory, how you actually have the problem of the memory, and when you actually think beyond a certain point of reference, you actually end up being into voids. So these landscapes actually served as these a frozen moment of time. These are not actually landscapes of torment, or landscape which are like as I see it, which is in pain, which is torn, or which is destroyed, or which has, these are landscape which has been left like that, arid, and which has grown like the psyche, which the kind of uh, memory of the people, uh, who memory of the people for whom, if you think back, you get a void. So and these were all these fields which had no cultivation, it was barren, and has grown through all these things, and I wanted to represent that in that way. These are done in charcoal and you on paper works, small scale works. It's another drawing. And that the other aspect of this thing was this intense fear that you have of not being able to place yourself in a certain kind of a historical juncture, like that. So these were all the preliminary concerns of that show, where there's this fear, there was this uncertainty, there's this very kind of a you know uh, a feeling of uh, of a tension that is very much uh, inside me, which was something I was trying to propose with that show. So that show actually happened in Knots in 2018, and Knots is at that time was an experimental space run by V. Divakar, and he has asked me to do a show there. So it is actually a space which uh, we did a lot of experimental practices, and we had a lot of like talks, poetry reading sessions, and people from all different kinds of discourse would come and present their ideas. So this was a show that we did there, and it was actually the idea of that whole show was to talk, to think, and to place myself inside the discourse. I remember, like, when I was doing my MA in MSU Baroda. Yeah, I uh, MSU Baroda. That was one of the key problem that I was actually facing. Like, to not uh, of not being able to place yourself inside, or not being able to place your trajectories, or not having any not having the problem of history, or not having a lineage. Like, there's some connections that is very vital uh, uh, for 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 sorry. Okay. uh, is it better now? So should I continue? Okay. So please let me know, Prabhakar, if like going okay, because it's a bit of a problem doing this with kind of talking to a screen. Uh, so I will continue with the idea of not being able to place. That is where actually that discourse, the idea of the whole problem of identifying, and the whole problem of politics actually interferes into my practice as such, or I was actually searching for all these issues, that or all this like this emotional rage that you have, and this anger that you have, and this kind of attention that uh, the tension that is going on through this process. Okay. Uh, then I will try to talk about this idea of witness, which actually started with the same show in Knots, which is uh, the uh, the image of the falcon. If you see at my show in Coach, I was also dealing with the same the image of the falcon, which you can see as a cutout from the earlier image, which was used again. And if you see the narratives of Poige Lapachan, there is this song. There's this folk song by him, which tells about the slavery in Kerala that happened during the pre-modern time, and it the song is like this, which I have used again in the this thing. I will try to say the song. Yoked with buffaloes and bulls, we plow the fields, plowed the fields. Father is sold Tindara. We all wept Tindara. We wept disconsolately Tindara. Uh, the elder one was is caught Tindara. The plantation was dug out. He was turned in the pit, covered with dried leaves and set on fire. So, and it actually talks about the time of the pre-modern slavery, and it was the eagle was he actually in the narratives of Koigila Apichan, if you try to understand his songs and everything, he actually manifests himself as a falcon, and in this same song which is sung by Kuttappan, the folk singer, you can actually see that there is an image where the children of the slaves who have been sold to the landlord, and the landlord actually sells the father and mother to different slave owners, and the children are actually left in the forest to roam around, and the father is asking the eagle, who is who's circling in the sky to look after his kids, and the kids are actually telling to the eagle that if you see my father somewhere, uh, tell them that we are okay. So all this like that is where I think we come into the uh, point of narrating this the importance of this what you say this uh, I will say this visual imagination, like how you actually make symbols, or this this no, there's always this question how it was earlier. Did the Dalits actually had lived in a they had a very the question of did Dalits have a kind of a uh, you know uh, an existence of their own, apart from this thing. So even if the all part of our memory actually starts with the point of slavery, and what beyond or before that is actually nowhere registered in the history, or it becomes a problem if you start actually think towards. So that is where actually the intervention of Koigi Lapisan happens, by making a series of stories and a series of narration and building up images, which he actually does to fill that voids that has been present throughout the histories of of uh, of uh, of the subaltern people. And I think that becomes a very important point. You know, like the thinking about does all these people had their own original existence, or or is it that even the art or the culture of the Dalits had actually had a had a past, or did that have a lineage to actually talk with? And one of the other very interesting thing that Koigil Apichan did was all of his sermons at PRDS was in the form of the spirit mediated speeches, and he actually talked in the form of songs, and he never gave and like speeches that was in a very speech kind of speech. All his narrations was in form of songs and spirit mediated speeches kind of thing. So I think that becomes also a very important point in my own concern with the idea of identity, and towards working towards the uh, working towards it. Like the that is the problem of the language. you know when you talk about politics and politics in art, or we actually are talking about representing politics in a certain way, like making images that you actually make and try to represent, or make in the images what kind of politics you actually stand for, like making it in a narrative form as such. But when you think in terms of language, what the interventions of Koigil Apachan, I think, was uh, was very creative, and in that way he actually used his imagination in maintaining a historical past that actually worked out towards it becoming that actually for the people, for his people. So there was also this time in the history when he actually burns the Bible, saying that there's nothing Bible doesn't talk about our people or our history. You shouldn't read the Bible, and he burns it. And actually, he then starts talking about his own sermons. He starts giving sermons about the history and how the people were, and how he was actually uh, trying to make uh, a narrative, or a story of that past which was not written, and how important that was. And and the other important thing that struck me was the way he actually structured the language to speak it out. Like if you say uh, the form of spirit mediated speech, that was actually his interventions uh, towards the aesthetics, towards the politics of aesthetics. Actually, uh, I would say, like, he was actually dealing with the aesthetics of to make an effect that was politically affecting his people, who was devoid of education, who didn't have any modern means to understand any other kind of language. So I think that intervention becomes a very important turning, departure for my other concerns towards my progress. So these are some images from before the two shows that I did from 2018 and 2019, which also has this image of this like there is this fish which is a very lazy fish of her, and it is roaming around with the kids, and you can see my and this was drawn from a childhood memory. And so the idea of the witness was always there. There was someone who was watching you all the time. And when I look now, that the idea of the witness was always present. As And this is one of my earlier work, which I did, where you can see two animals, and and they were all looking at what was happening there. This was And most of my I would like to say that the stories was one thing that has triggered a lot of my practices towards understanding, towards materializing my concerns. And it all started with some kind of stories that was told to me, and I took it, and I was trying to uh, make it into my own in my own language, try to articulate it in a very different way. And again, these are all older works. And there, then we this is a quote by James Baldwin, of the same essay, from his essay, which is of the same name. It's called "I Am Not Your Negro." And during after that 2018 show, I was selected for a residency in London, where I was actually doing a research on the Black Art movement that happened in Britain, and the Black Art group, which was active during the Thatcher regime, and what happened to that discourse of blackness, and how the identity discourse actually happened. So no, because no, I'm not talking in a linear way. It's like I'm talking like swapping through images and time. So that is the point when I was actually thinking about a non-essential point of view towards looking into identity. When I actually started to read, and actually I was able to understand the black discourse and what it was to be black, and and what was their idea towards the liberation, and what was our idea towards annihilation of caste. And I think both these and that was my whole project about. And And in that, I have used one of this Stuart Hall quotation in the show that happened in Cruz, and which I have here. So I will talk about the idea of "I am not your Negro," which was proposed by James Baldwin. The problem that happened, or the dilemma that I fell into was this concrete idea, or the embodiment of being a person from or a representing, or the problem of representing a certain kind of idea of identity, like being a person from a Dalit background, and also the idea of you think of it in a more reductive term. And there's this phrase from this his writing. It says that James Baldwin actually says that I was not in the forefront of this fight, or this liberation fights of the Black movement that happened in America. I was not there. I was not actually. My fight happened in the language of understanding the effect of that. That political discourse. Like if you look at the language of James Baldwin, there you can see the fight actually he was making towards it. It was purely an aesthetics a fight towards where the language of making and the vocabulary of visual language, all these things came together, and he was actually able to critique the idea of caste, the idea of race inside the formation of the language itself. I think that became a very important point for my understanding of how you actually deal with the dilemma that I myself have fell into. Like and this was another work which I did during 2018 show, and which is also a drawing which was titled "Wounds and Stars," and it also had the same aspect of the pride. When no this thing, and or the my figures were not victims. They were actually, even though they were like susceptible to violence, they actually had a calm understanding of where they were looking and what they wanted. They were actually articulate in a certain way. So then this is a show. This is an image of the show that happened in Baroda, and you can see the work. And this is another work from the same show. So at that time, I was more interested in finding, like looking for the past, looking for like where I came from and what was me, and all this triggered me into a process of looking into the root, like where I came from and what kind of person I was, and what is the history. And this is an image of a grandmother showing me how a cap was made, and she was showing me the folding of a cap of this tribe head. So and that was an image that I used in the same show. This is another image of a bird, and this was image from the same show. And this is also an image from the show called Dark Place in the Sun. And the title of this work was Crippled Hero. This was also based on a story that was narrated to me by my grandmother, which had this all these disabled people as the main characters. So at some point I was the narration and the storytelling part was very intense of my imagination towards the idea of understanding or verbal or making this thing happen. So then there was this after that I come into this, this is a quote by Stuart Hall which I used in my show in Coach, which says that not the so-called return to the roots but coming into term with our roots. It was like, and this was then the when I when you actually look into the roots or try to engage into the this thing, and they think of the idea of identity in a more essentialized manner, and to try to find out all these things, always you end up in the same void, which I was trying to say, or always you end up hearing the appropriations of the power that actually you end up, and the truth is actually somewhere else. You're actually the process of that actually alienates you from discourse. So in the idea of initiated or to the idea of Koigel Appachan, where where his intervention of his language actually came from the same idea of the becoming, the idea of the becoming, that uh, if idea of the becoming of the past. It was necessary for all the Dalits to believe that they had a better future, and there was a certain time in history where there was a historical moment where they fell from their no idea of a normal equal life, and they became slaves at this juncture. And this idea was really important, and that's where he actually proposed the idea of Adi Dravidas, and came up with the discourse of this Aryan invasion, and this idea of Mool Nivasi, or what you say, that this the concept of Adi Dravida. I think all these things become very important, that you actually verbalize or make a vocabulary to make these things uh, 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 form in the form of your imagination, or in the form of the intervention in the language for a future becoming, that towards emancipation. And that was the understanding that I actually had when I was understanding the discourse of blackness, the idea of race and idea of slavery, and all these things with my research in uh, uh, gasworks. And these are some of the works that I did in gasworks. So, Imran. Then it also had images from my earlier works, and I was repeating, and I was making more different kind of this thing to it. This is the other thing that another work I made during that time. And this is a work which I did with a found object, and pasting a drawing on the paper. So by that time I was more towards the understanding the idea of drawing. So this was in 2018, I guess, and this was part of the show called Working Practices. Uh, and this piece of work was called The Flaming Feet, and which was again inspired by a book by the same title by D.R. Nag, who actually talks about the Dalit history and Dalit movement in Karnataka. So, and it was influenced by that. Then again, there's a quote by another writer, a black writer called Alice Walker, which I found very interesting towards my concerns, which says that in search of my mother's garden, I found my own. And there is always this question. I would like to share with all you guys, uh, like did the people had always you say the idea of there was this whole this South Asian theorists have, all these subaltern theorists have this idea of or this leftist idea of like helping someone, or like being the intellectual representation of the downtrodden people, and all this. And when you as a person think that actually was there a history towards the making of and where you can actually find your episteme to understand these nuances in the different things that you actually face. So in this essay called "In Search of My Mother's Garden," Alice Walker actually tries to talk about this thing, that that in her mother's garden, actually, she finds that all the women from the African community who were slave and who were brought into these through the Atlantic slavery to America, had came with them, had come to that place with a lot of aesthetical ability to make pills, and to and I also remember like sharing this idea with one of the artists black artists who came for a seminar in Darbar Hall in Kochi, and she was also the question came from one of my students that was there this history before, the no was there the idea of a history. So her reply was very interesting to me. Like she said that if you look at the American culture right now, you can see that all the creative interventions and all the cultural things, all the technical developments that they happened was from the knowledge of the slaves that was brought to America. So and the but they were never acknowledged towards that, and that becomes the whole that is where this phrase becomes a very interesting thing, and that is where we actually need a different set of knowledges to understand these kind of like uh, these kind of erasure. I won't call it erasure. I would say that this kind of masking of all these knowledges and taking ownership of all this knowledge that is part of different communities and different people and all varieties of different. And the problem I think is that we lack a certain set of vocabulary or certain set of epistemic knowledge that we understand these problem of uh, uh, oppression. And these are some of the other works that uh, that was I do simultaneously. These are like small drawings, and these drawings are actually inspired from mostly dreams and all this fantasy and all this idea from stories, and these are made with sketch pens and all. And there is this same by Alice Walker where he talks about this dream memory, where as one of her character in her novel called The Temple of My Familiar, as this constant dream of her going to a tree which is inhabited by these gorillas. And there is this beautiful narration of this incident that occurs to her again and again. From the childhood she has this dream, and 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 that character is actually in search for her history and what and the place, and trying to assimilate that experience of a dream. And so when as a person who actually thinks from a point of a point of not able to associate with or living in this kind of certain kind of void and not make it able to have connection, these becomes very important points of a rupture or rift, where you actually see, or actually these connections become visible to you in the form of uh, uh, in a very different form. So this is again one of the quotations that has actually inspired me. It is by Toni Morrison. It would not be black, because Toni Morrison actually talks about her literature and her idea of literature in this quote, where she says that her literature is not black because I am black. It would not be black because its subject is black. It would be something intrinsic, indigenous, something in the way it was put together, the sentences, the structure, the texture, and tone, so that anyone who read it would realize. No, I think that is a very if when I talk about my own understanding of the discourse, this becomes a very crucial point uh, for my idea of politics and also my idea of aesthetics. Uh, that actually where Toni Morrison actually talks about her idea of literature, and she actually refers to the music where she actually wants to write like music, and she says that like the structure of the music itself is black, you know, uh, like that, and then I would actually go to some of my works from my student time where I was actually, like more interested in languages, and where I was trying to, experiment with different materials and all kind of scattered ideas. And this was one of the painting that I did during that time. And this is even older painting. And if I see them right now, I can actually say that there are a lot of references to what I have actually evolved. That is why when I said that it has not never traveled in a linear way, I kept on coming back again and again, rereading all these images, which had stayed with me. But at that moment, I always lack the ability to articulate what it actually meant, or what it actually symbolized. And this was another work from like, school time. And meanwhile, after my studies and everything, I was working as an illustration artist for a company, and these were some of the things that I did for them. And I thought, as in terms of language, or dealing with different kind of representation, different kind of saying, which will always be my concern from the start. I thought I could share this. This was one of the work which I did in my college times in MSc Baroda, which uh, which was a kind of an installation where I have drawn this portrait of this, people who actually talked against the government and was banished or banned from the nation. And I painted this small portraits with oil paint, and it was installed along the wall, which you can see. All these things were there as part of that wall. Only I did was to install the small drawings of these people. And then we come to this another proposition where it's like equality is a presupposition, an axiomatic point of departure, or else it is nothing. And here I would like to say about this idea of equality altogether. When you take about politics and when you talk about, and this quote actually talks about something very this thing, as equality as is an idea actually where we actually start. Equality is actually a presupposition, an axiomatic point, a departure where we actually start to think about something. It is not a place where we actually reach, or it is not a place of a you reach after you educate, or you become, you are uplifted by some other kind of you know, people. And that has always been, I think, the problem of these if you talk about the Dalit discourse in India, always these all kind of representations, or the leftist representations, or all the people who actually try to talk about uh, the subaltern, all the Dalit communities, or feminists, or who were actually representatives, or the intellectual representatives, actually made this idea, had actually made this dilemma, like this presupposition as the equality being an idea or somewhere we have to reach. So then this is another work of the same show from Coach, uh, which where I have used this found objects of a mirror and and a mop, which was I freshly bought it from the market. I thought, and it made a, and these were all my experiment with medium and materials to understand the idea of language and articulating such a discourse and politics in a very different way. Then this particular work is called The Nose Snatcher and Other Curious Tale. And This was a part of a show called Mindful Circulation, and you can see there are these are the details of the show of the particular piece. And Mindful Circulation was a curation of South Asian artists from Indonesia, and it was curated by Christian Mink. And this work was part of that show. And this work is also an idea taken from this narrative, which was also a story told to me by uh, uh, my grandmother as I was a child, and which I later read in an anthology by A.K. Ramanujan, which had a collection of these folk stories uh, that which had the collection of folk stories from South India, and that was also one of the story that I which kept haunting me a lot, or which always kept me think, what does it mean? What does it mean? Yeah. And this work is a represent. I think I've reached the end of this presentation. And I think this is something that I wanted to say. I think I've not missed uh, some aspects. Even if I will try to answer the questions. So, if there is any questions, I would be happy to answer. Uh, I'm really sorry. Towards the aesthetics. Okay, I would then. So here I can see some questions, and this is by Rajiv. I'm really sorry. Towards the uh, so Rajiv is asking, dear Jitin, can you please talk a bit more? Uh, Talk a bit more that how could you articulate the ruins of land and the fear to be placed historically, and which are parallelly memorized from the pre-modern slavery to modern concerns of meta-narration towards race or caste by the representation of victimized bodies? Or can we narrate the politics of body without the fear? Actually, thank you, Raji, for asking this question. Like, and I'm really happy that you're saying this. Uh, uh, and I think it's a very important question. I think the thing that I was trying to articulate here was about the idea of emancipation, about the idea of freedom, and it doesn't. When we actually start from there, then uh, you are at the disposal of the language, and what you do from there, it's is there you actually it is your take on uh, as it's a very singular act of of being something, this idea of emancipation actually is a very singular idea of a person being this thing. Here I would like to share like a similar thing that I read recently, which is like what an emancipator actually can do. An emancipator actually can give you or can give you a possibility of thinking in an equal level, or or a possibility of engaging in a discourse in a very equal level, and not as a victimized body, or not as a person who is actually and I think that is a very important point in the discourse that we are trying to make. And that is where the point of imagination, that is where the point of language, and that is where the point of, there is this aspect of also this confidence and self belief. And if you think the idea of caste, we can also understand that this it it also affects you in a very different way as a psyche, as the body, as you think about yourself, the way you represent. So I think this it is an important proposition that um, it works, that you can actually make people realize the possibility of engaging with language in freedom without fear. Yes, I think it is a big possibility. I think that's what Alice Walker also tried to say about this. And like, many questions. I can't find any other questions. So, Prabhakar, should I stop or? Say about this? And okay, I think I will stop. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Secular Movement, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And I think uh, I was able to make a point, or I was able to express uh, my concerns. Thank you so much.